Welcome to Your Iconic Image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlena Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Being an entrepreneur is a tough business and not for the weak at heart. Jeremy Delk is a serial entrepreneur with a passion for disrupting industries. Since 2001, his businesses have earned hundreds of millions in revenue, created hundreds of high-paying American jobs, as well as other notable distinctions. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to me about disrupting our industry. What does that term mean to you?
Well, I think, I don't know that I set out to be a disruptor. I think it just kind of happened via my approach. And I think my approach is one of just really trying to keep it to the basics. And, what I've learned in my, not so short 20 plus year career now is that overarchingly business is business and people do business with people. So many times I see entrepreneurs go through and they're trying to, that doesn't work in this industry, or it's not done that way. And what I've typically done is taken from step to step, whether it's Wall Street to building materials to really whatever industry I've been in, healthcare. I've taken a simple approach of, okay, what's our good product or service? Who's our avatar? Who's our customer? And how do we make a great experience for that customer? And if you center those pieces in there, oftentimes you do things differently. Now, it always doesn't work. You just mentioned a couple like accolades of mine. There's probably a laundry list that would take up the whole show of failures that I've had. But when it works, it's pretty special. But you do it outside looking in as you're this crazy disruptor, which you're really not. You're just doing things in a more simplified approach, serving the customer first, not industry. So it's very industry agnostic.
So talk to me, because people always throw out, creating a great customer experience or creating a different customer experience or creating a high level customer experience. Talk to me about the things that go into your customer experience.
Well, for me, I guess it starts even further back with what the businesses are, right? For me, I'm a serial entrepreneur because I've probably got some mental issues, right? Where I just don't like stability, right? I want to go through, crash the challenge. And then once it's actually working and I've built a company to like, wow, it's profitable and making revenue. And then it's just about scaling and improving processes. I'm a pretty good process guy, but once it's just, take it and run with it, I really lose interest. So for me, it's always that, well, what's the next thing? Well, I'm a manufacturer. Well, what's past manufacturer? Being a OEM, private label, whatever it tends to be. It's the first piece. What is there really something that's unique or a value proposition that's doing something differently that makes me interested? It has to be fun for me, and it's got to be an ability for me to learn something. I think that's that. Once I triggered in on that, whether let's say it's healthcare, I didn't get into finding all these healthcare companies and telemedicine, diagnostics as a vision board. I did it by a small step, made an investment in a pharmacy business. And then that opened me up to a world that I wasn't familiar with. And then it got me really excited and then really frustrated. Well, why? This is so great. Like I had my own healthcare journey personally. And I was like, wow, this is great. And then that shifted to, why doesn't everyone know about this? Right. So now it became more of a passion or a mission of like, hey, what's wrong? Where is the disconnect? And then I can take the whole podcast up on going through that. But from there, that's the obsession. It's the customer obsession of like, hey, what I have, everyone actually needs. There's not a trick or a shtick to it. They actually need this. And if they don't get my good service or product, I'm doing them a disservice. So if you have that passion or obsession, then what you do is really drive into the customer or the end customer coming like, well, what is it? What are the barriers or the components that are keeping them from experiencing or taking that product on? So it's really just putting yourself in the customer's piece, right? Of understanding where they are. They watch the news or they filter by the economy and election, like where are they, understanding their pain points and trying to deliver on them. And that's all a guess, right? I think you don't know that. It's all theory, and you just try and start. The trick and what makes it really impactful and where you get customers really to become raving fans is you actually talk to them, which is crazy. Or you then, besides talking to them, the next level of that is actually listening to them, right? Sorry, that's me. Listening to them and taking it valuable. Like, hey, that makes sense. Let me try and improve that process for you. People forget that so many times. People forget, there's a customer giving you a credit card or money across the counter. That's not a transaction. That's a relationship, right? And you have to treat it like such. Otherwise, your transactions will be fewer and fewer and less reoccurring. If you treat it as a relationship and understand, like, hey, how was that? They bought your product. Good. So many people don't follow up and say, how was your experience? They do all of this. I mean, I've got a digital media company as well. So retargeting and pixeling and going through these elaborate success and, attrition and, these complete funnels in relationships to go through and get a customer. And then once they get them, they'll put them on a nurture campaign that follows up with, every 3 months. It just, the hard part's getting someone in your sandbox. And if you really look at that as, that's a challenge, don't get me wrong, especially with advertising and things moving, but getting someone is one piece. Keeping them is so much easier, but people forget about it.
Yeah. And I've heard that along the way from several people that it is cheaper, so to speak, to keep the customers that you have and market to those people than to try and go out and get others, because those people are already invested with you, whether it be literally invested or mentally invested or whatever.
No, that's right. And then also oftentimes, let's say you're selling popsicle stick. I don't know, whatever widget you're selling. Sometimes they don't need another popsicle stick, but that if you do what I said first and actually let's have a conversation with their customer. How did it work? Did you like the popsicle stick? Was it great? Did it taste? What was it? And then that's the utility. Maybe you want to make popsicle stick houses with your kids. Well, now you need more. So listening to them, getting that feedback can oftentimes lead to new products or product spinoffs or additional things that you could repackage and service. Then you are now going deeper in the wallet share as opposed to wider, right? So then that's an easy way to help grow and scale your businesses.
And that's another interesting point that you bring up, because I've always had the thought that, and I learned this along the way from people that I've spoken to, as an entrepreneur, especially if you are just starting out, you don't have to go wide in relationships when you can go deep in a few, because as you go deep in those few, that will help you. And those people will become your allies and your advocates.
No, exactly. And I think that's where the learning makes a ton of difference. And, I've got a book coming out into this year called Without a Plan. And it's very much a memoir of how I've went through life. And it's not lollipops and gumdrops, just, I'm going to be super successful. It's not that obtuse where you have zero plan, but it's not far from it, right? It's just taking a step. Hey, I want to go and we're just going to really belabor popsicle. Say, I want to be the best popsicle business guy ever. So let's do it. Let's not go through and think about all the different ways, because it's not going to work anyway, right? Let's just go through and start, get going, have a vision of kind of where I want to go, but not get so inundated with this paralysis by analysis so you never begin. And then once you start, then that's like your beta users and your early adopters where you can go through like, hey, how's that going? What's going through? You learn so much of that piece where you really refine it before you go wide, right?
So do you see holes in things that in different industries and lean in? Do you start with things that interest you and see how you can adapt it? How do you start in your process when you're going to be investing in something or changing something?
And just be super open. I think that's it. My career. So this is, and then you can tell me if you plan for this. My career started day trading when I was 19, making a bunch of money, losing a bunch of money, Wall Street to my own venture capital firm 20 years ago, building materials, building manufacturing, windows and doors. animal health, regenerative medicine, human health, pharmaceutical, epigenetic diagnostics, and telemedicine, plus a little digital media and equine service and a couple other businesses in there. There's no way you have like, that's the typical roadmap, right? There's no way. What's happened is relationships, or hey, I've had a relationship here with this individual and this opportunity came up. I just say yes to a lot of things, mainly because I've got, again, probably back to mental and like a little attention deficit components where I just always want to see more. But really, it comes down to learning. Like, that's interesting. I don't know, because no one knows. Like, how do you know if it's going to work, right? So many people live in like, well, you want to go into, Elon Musk wants to go into, make reusable rockets. That's just dumb. No, that will never happen. Well, and maybe someone had the idea before, but he said, well, let's just run it to stream and just see what actually happens with it. So many times, if you can just be open to an opportunity and see them, and then, the other part of that is failure, right? I think there's a huge component of a mindset around failure that's probably started even in school when you're young, that's a bad thing. It's like, I'm not trying to keep plugging here, but so it's without a plan. And it's a memoir of unbound action and failing my way to success. It's literally, I talk about all of the accolades, the Inc. 500, all that crap, right? That everyone has their own CV and resume. Dude, that's not really important. What's important is how I fell on my ass and how I did all these other things to actually get there. Those are the lessons that I've learned. I'm a better entrepreneur now than I was 20 years ago. Not because I read some cool book. It's because I got my ass kicked a ton and I learned from that, right? Mm-hmm. So embracing that failure and just going through is something I'm overly passionate about. And I try to fail fast. I try to break it. So I think that's an important piece where because you can't, no one has enough time to say yes to everything indefinitely. So if we're going back to popsicles, let's do it. Hey, Joel, let's go through and figure out the popsicle business. But let's define success or failure right now. It will be, we're going to sell 1 billion popsicles in 6 months, or we're not. It's binary. Because after that, when that 6-month process, you start to get emotional about it, right? After you're in it. And now it's your baby, and maybe your popsicle baby's ugly, right? It's hard to do that when you're in the moment. But if you predetermine, hey, at this point, I'm calling time of death, or we're going to the next level, that's the best way to do it. So I try to get that. I try never to wait 6 months. I try to break something and ruin it in 2 months, because get great customer feedback, come up with a prototype, go through, sell it, give it away, whatever you think, get it. And then the market will speak. It could be the best idea ever. Market may not be ready, or it could be overpriced or underpriced. So it's the best way to get information and then store that, because down the track, maybe it wasn't right then, but 5 years, it could be right.
So do you tend to say yes to everything, then do the research, or do you kind of research it and then say yes?
In tandem or in parallel. I tend just to say yes because I want to learn, right? I can't form there's no way to have an informed opinion unless you know the industry, right? If I know the business and I know that this is a bolt-on, so I'm in healthcare, I'm wearing my healthcare hat. If I know the space and I know the economics, like that's easier for me to diligence, because I know, like, yeah, if I take that, eliminate something, plug it into my group, it'll just make money. So those are easier. But I'm looking at a software deal right now in university. I don't know anything about. I know about SaaS businesses. I know they're valued really well, but I don't know anything about it. So I think, and my pitch to the entrepreneur was like, I think I can make it work. I think I can get you the money. It's coming from me. So I think as long as I believe it, I can give you the money. I think my other bolt-on shared services can actually help. And I've got a little bit of experience in business. So it's a yes with those contingencies. Like, hey, I need to figure out, I need to check your balance sheet. I need to look at what your cash flow statements look like. I need to understand the stickiness of their customer. So it's a yes, but it's not an immediate, yeah, here you go, and then find out. So it's through that component. Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're not just, you have to be somewhat interested. And there's things I'm not interested in, right? There's some businesses that just don't excite me, or I don't think I can add value. So I just politely say, hey, maybe I'm not an investor in that business. Maybe I'm a business coach, or I'm an advisor, or I'm a different role that can help. And if that's beneficial for both parties, then I look at that too.
And you touched on failure. And I think that's something that so many people shy away from. And it's so critical to be able to fail. And because people often don't see the journey. They only see the end result. And so they don't realize how many times that successful person has failed to get to that point. But during the whole failure process, at what point do you cut your losses? Let's say somebody is just starting off in a certain industry. At what point is enough enough?
Well, I think that's their own risk tolerance, and that's your own goal. It's to be indifferent. So when I had my digital media, we were doing physical products, some in supplements, some in other just goods and services, but it was actually a physical product, not a digital product. We defined it as I think I would put $25,000 into it, right? $25,000 was basically $5,000 for initial batch, enough for like 1,000 or something samples or units, and then it was $20,000 as fast as I could spend it on ads, which typically took with the ramp, because you can waste a lot of money if you just try and overspend. So we would do that as short as 45 days, as long as 3 months. And then we had a metric. We said that, hey, if we could get our ROAS, or return on ad spend, at this level, then it was worth going to the next tranche. Not like, all right, quit your jobs, everybody, we're all in this thing. It was like, okay, it's now past that next level. So I think that's what some people are. If you're you've got a decently paying, high paying, remote job right now, and you've always wanted to build, again, like popsicles. We should start a popsicle company, Shane.
Apparently so.
But you've got a high paying job. You probably shouldn't quit your job and start selling popsicles. You probably shouldn't do that, right? Unless you just need a lot of motivation, because that will give you motivation. But it's setting that first step or goal.
So how did you disrupt your industries? What are some of the things that you're most proud of that you've done to do that?
I think so. I think two parts, right? Well, I think the biggest component for me was what I hopefully try to touch on impact-wise in healthcare. We had an investment in a pharmacy business that was really, really successful, Inc. 500 company. And then we hit some regulatory challenges, cost me a ton of money. And it's a whole other podcast, whole other story. But what came out of that was an understanding of the health, some of the problems in healthcare, right? And then you got this 3P system: a payer, provider, and a patient. And insurance-based models, predominantly the decision makers are the payer and the provider, right? So the insurance payer and then what the provider is able to actually do. So the patient secondary, which it should be the other way around. The patient should be really the advocate, then the provider. Payer could be secondary. So what we saw, we were doing a lot of integrative health or well care. And if you had a celebrity or, influential person that you would know, name any, they were probably a patient of ours. And they had these concierge doctors that were in Beverly Hills and, New York, LA, and they're paying $5,000, $10,000 a month for healthcare. And we came to know a lot of these physicians who did great work, and are very, very good at what they do and offer good value. And that's why I kind of started off saying that I was really excited about that. But then I became frustrated. I live in Lexington, Kentucky. Like, I actually had some resources, but I hadn't heard of this. So what became a mission for me is being able to make this affordable to the masses. And we did that. I've sold the company since, but you can get great healthcare from world-class doctors that would charge probably $2,000 an hour for around $300-400 a month. Which, again, I'm not saying is cheap, but what's the cost of sickness, right? If you could be optimized, feel great going through for a few grand a year. I mean, I think the average family of 4 spends like $15,000 a year or $20,000 a year in health insurance and copays. And for what? Like, what do you actually get from that?
So let's say you want to change an industry, let's say like healthcare, and you come up to people that, frankly, they're making money this way and they don't want to see it change. How do you circumvent that or get the right allies to help you change their mind?
Look, healthcare probably is probably one of the most unchangeable.
Yeah, I'm only using it because you brought it up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that you have to be realistic in what you can do. I don't think I had an expectation of, completely changing the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a lot more than some little kid from Lexington, Kentucky, or Bartown, Kentucky, where I'm originally from. But what I think I've maybe been able to do is at least be part of a very small part of starting a conversation and educating. And, that's it. Education, right? I think people are empowered. People are becoming, with the internet and where we are with, the information age and access to information and the way in which we learn, it allows a consumer to be more demanding or more astute, right? My mom, I always pick on her, but she goes to the doctor, and again, she's healthy, so I'm very blessed. But she goes to the doctor, oh, I had this thing, and the doctor gave me a shot. Like, a shot of what? No, just a shot. Like, there's no advocacy. Like, because he or she is a doctor, it must be okay. And going back to the 3 Ps, well, it's because this is the symptoms. You put it in a WebMD Pro on your iPad, and again, I can go on a tirade, but someone on an algorithm based on insurance and reimbursements and it was like, this should work, as opposed to saying, hey, what's actually wrong? Let me understand you and look at this N of 1. The approach I'm describing is far more cumbersome. It's far more in depth. It requires more diagnostics, more labs. So again, I think you have to be realistic in what your expectations are. And I didn't go into it, saying I'm going to change healthcare. I think that I will be a small voice, and some of the things that I've started and then have sold, they still exist, right? I think that's my big spring. And that if I was just some crazy guy, some crazy ideas, then after I got out of them, they wouldn't be around anymore. But they are, right? And most of my businesses that I've sold still survive me, and I think that's good. I think that I'm good enough to, in my business and my consulting stuff that I do. I always say, don't call me if your business is going well. Like, I cannot help you. If you're like in against the wall, business is burning down, like you're there, like that's like fired. Like, I love that. Like, that's what kind of gets me excited, and I kind of go through. That's where I'm really good. But once I've kind of hit that next level of that plateau and I'm like out, I'm better at building and creating and taking that 0 to 1, to steal Peter Thiel's, that approach of just the creation, innovation idea, and then making it something tangible and real, then passing it on to the adults to, take it from there.
Love it. So let's go back to failure for a minute, because in there too, if these people have failed up to now, like you said, the business is burning down around their ears. How do we adapt through failures?
Well, I think it's a big set. And I think mindset's, over generalized, but I think it's just, so I look at events, right? And I don't believe, even mostly in personal life. I think there's some differences that would be nuanceable in personal life, but 100% in business, I'm a firm believer that nothing good or bad happens to you or your business, period. They're merely events. They're merely things that happen. It's the emotions and the reactions that we apply to those events that often determine whether they were good or bad. So to go a little bit deeper there, I mean, some of my staff see me and well, we just got served with a lawsuit, or we just had, a patent infringement, or we have, a cash flow crunch. My approach has always been a bit more laissez-faire. I don't get emotional reactional. It's taken time to do that because I've seen enough things just work itself through. But think about it, right? Think about in your business, right? Your, personal branding, imaging. Think about your business. I guarantee you there is a time where you spoke to your partner, someone in your family, someone that you're close to, and said, it's all over, right? I guarantee that's happened, right? And if it hasn't happened to you, it's coming, and you're going to get you get the mic. Everyone has a plan until they get punched. Ask the guy that was sitting behind Tyson a few weeks ago, but it's going to happen. But most people, especially entrepreneurs, have seen that. And if you think back to it, you're still here, right? You're still here. So it's that component where you have to just be above the emotion and be like, all right, it sucks, it's going through, but it's that choice of whether you let those events define you or you define them. And I think I talk a lot about that in the book. I wouldn't have been one of the youngest traders at Fidelity if I didn't blow up a $2 million portfolio in 3 days. You can hear about the cool day trading, how I built this big thing. That's cool, but I built it in 9 months. I lost it in 3 days, 3.5 days to be technical. That sucked. That was the end of the world. I was going home to live with my mom. I was a failure. Or, and I'm sitting here as the or, right? Because I didn't go home with my mom. So that's a piece. In the moment, there's nothing to learn from that, right? I was like, it's all over. It's horrible. Probably, if not the single top 3 biggest lessons I've ever learned in my life, that I actually say losing that money was almost the best thing that happened to me early on. Because it taught me that I wasn't invincible, taught me that nothing is permanent, good or bad, and that you can kind of, survive and go through it. So if you start doing that mindset and you start understanding like, hey, I have done this. Maybe you don't, I don't recommend losing $2 million in 3 days for your audience. That's not a great strategy. There's cheaper ways to learn the lesson. Learn it from me. But think about the things that you've already overcome. You're here, you're human. Like all the things you've already done to survive, you're here. So give yourself that confidence and give yourself that encouragement, go through. And the more you do that, the more failure becomes part of the process, because you're going to fail, period. I promise you, you're going to fail. Just don't make it catastrophic. Don't put it where it's all in. Fail quick, fail small, learn, get better and get better.
Love that. And talk to us a little bit to your book that's coming out, Without a Plan. If people get nothing else out of it, what do you hope that they get out of it?
I hope that they get out of it, because a lot of it's personal for me too, on like my story. And I think it's important for me, I think I've never been asked this question. It's probably a pretty basic question. 2 things. One, entrepreneur or business, just get started, just go, right? And I think it even goes down to your personal life, right? Just get started. Like, what is the worst thing that can actually happen? Go home, live with your mom, right? What is it? Define that. Get comfortable with it. Okay, I can tolerate that, or I can't. Then come back a little bit, go. But just get started, because no matter, I can tell you, any business, right? No business plan for COVID, did they? Right? There's no business, but there's no business plan for some things we don't know. So why let that delay you getting what in yourself? What's relationship, life partner, business? Don't get in your own way. So I think it just gets started. And I think the other piece is, for me, I just turned 42 a month or so ago, and it took me a long time I've had a lot of success, but it took me a lot of time personally to really understand what's important in life. Right. And it's, I think there's a challenge, and I love the Shark Tank, and I love all the things that are out there, and everyone's an influencer now, and everyone wants to be a business, but some people aren't made for entrepreneurship. Some people aren't. And then entrepreneurship is not, of course, you fly on private jets, you do some things, but like, that's not what it's about. It's not the easy pieces. And then why are you doing them? Right. Like why? I think really understanding what's important to you, and then distilling that down into, that's it. So it's just that self barometer. Like, I want to go and change healthcare. I want to go and do that. Well, why? Do you want to do it because it just makes you happy? It gives you drive and it's passion? Then do it. You want to drive, Italian Ferraris because you like Italian sports cars? Then do it. But if you're doing it because I want to change healthcare to make a bunch of money, you're in the wrong game. If you want to drive a Ferrari to impress someone, you're fucking in the wrong game. Why at your core do you really want to do these things? And hopefully it comes down to love, relationship, and friendships, and passion. Like, hopefully that's what you kind of get out of it. And that goes back to getting out of your own way. So that's a really long-winded answer to hopefully two things. Really, just get out of your own way, get started, and understand your why, right? And you can lose focus on that. I've done it. I've lost focus many times. Like, I'm invincible, making all this money. Like, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for the right reasons? And okay, and like, am I making it back? Just putting that piece and having that little barometer for yourself, and like, I'm on the right track. And then you're good. And that gets you through the hard times. Why am I doing all this stuff? All this failure is so hard. Well, because it's important to my family. It's important to my legacy, or it's, that I think is what gets you through it. So having that core anchored beliefs and understanding of where you want to go is what I hope you take from it.
Good. And that was all a lot of great advice. So with that, I just have 4 final questions for you. The first one is, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
So there's some context here, but I was probably 22, 23. I left Fidelity. I was starting out of my own venture capital. We had a building material business, and we were selling these high-end window and door jobs, like out in the Hamptons. We did like Calvin Klein's house, Carl Icahn's house. And this guy came in. I remember it was a nice BMW X5. It led me to get my first X5. And we did his house, pretty successful guy, entrepreneur, restaurants, different businesses, what have you. And he paid me. I'm like, dude, I just want to pick your brain, dude. You're awesome. He was like 34 at the time. And I'm like, yeah, just tell me what you did. Like, how did you get to where you are? He's like, oh, well, I mean, like, I guess my best thing I can tell you is that he asked how old I was. He's like, all right, 23, good. You don't deserve to have any money in the bank until you're 30. I'm like, whoa, it's kind of a dick thing to say. Like, well, that's not nice. Like, why? I came to you polite. Like, why would you say that? And the context was really, and I clearly live by it, was you, like, people get so inept with like, oh, I'm not old, I'm too young. Like, you should be going so hard, right? And just failing as possibly case. So basically his context was like, hey, you don't need to have safety nets until you're 30, right? Just go in, follow your dreams, go through. You have an idea, fund it, go through, live off of ramen noodles. Like, who cares? Live in a shitty apartment. Just go through, because then you can afford to lose it all, right? Then, okay, 30, now you need to start maybe dialing back your risk tolerances. So for me, it took some context from him explaining that to me, but it made sense. And I lived by it, and it's worked out well for me.
Share with us one thing on your bucket list.
So I love travel. We're planning summer vacations now for the kids. So there's a great book Bill Perkins wrote called Die with Zero, and he's got these things that are called like time buckets, right? And like, hey, we were just in Tuscany last week, and walking through Florence, and like you're trying to get walking cities in before you're 50, right? So you can actually enjoy them. But now with Elon and Richard going through and making space actually palatable, I think it's me taking my son to space.
When the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
A hairbrush? No. Look, I think I'm a watch guy, right? So I think probably some sort of watch, and I like cars and collect cars as well. So some sort of either car keys or a cool old car.
And the last one, how do people find you? And also, how will they be able to get your book when that comes out?
Yeah, so hopefully the book's out sometime in end of this year, hopefully by Christmas. Definitely Labor of Love. But I'm pretty easy to find. It's jeremydelk.com. And I'm Jeremy S. Delk on all social. So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And love, happy to connect, happy to help. I've got something I'm putting on the website just actually, I think last week. And it's, little tips and little blueprints that you guys can get for free. This 1-page plan, right? Everyone has these business plans that are 40 pages that aren't good for anything. No one actually uses them. So I've got a simple component of like, hey, what's your North Star? Where do you want to go? And it's what I use in all my businesses. So hopefully if someone's, looking for something like a tool, you can have that with your audience for free.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all that information, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlena Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlenasemenza.com.